Hello everyone, welcome to SwitchUp. In today's video, we're going to have a look at one of the Five Nights at Freddy's games, which has recently had a physical release on the Nintendo Switch. That's Five Nights at Freddy's Into the Pit.
Yeah, a proper physical release. We will also have a copy of this one to give away as it's a sponsored video. And it's actually a game that really takes things in a different direction, artistically at least. That's interesting and I think you might enjoy hearing about.
Yeah, if you're a fan of Five Nights at Freddy's, the franchise as a whole, you'll know all about it, I'm sure. If it's a series you've never really touched, this one's actually quite different, so it may pique your interest. So what exactly is Into the Pit? Well, let's find out. So let's start with the story then, and this, as far as I can see, is actually based on a story from one of the graphic novels, Five Nights at Freddy's Fazbear Fright #1, Into the Pit.
That was a mouthful, wasn't it?
It was indeed. It was written by Ellie Cooper and Scott Cawthon, who is the creator of the whole franchise, and released in 2019. And as far as I've seen with some of these novels, I'm not proclaiming to be any sort of expert on this franchise, but these are almost a bit like the old Goosebumps books.
Yes,
do you know what I mean?
have that feel, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And the game here picks up the story of that, of a young child named Oswald, who is quite unhappy with his life. He feels he's stuck in quite a boring place. Nothing really ever happens. He needs to go and wait in a pizzeria while his dad works through the night, and his dad then picks him up at the end of his shift. And it's during one of these visits that things go awry.
Yeah, and when Glen says awry, he means the reanimation of animatronics that will hunt you down.
Yes, Oswald is, whilst sitting there bored waiting for his dad, as I said, intrigued to hear about an old ball pit that this pizzeria has and goes looking for it. He finds it and jumps into it, only to seemingly be transported back to the 80s.
Now, anyone that's got kids would never do that because those ball pits are filthy, aren't they?
Yeah, they're rank, and maybe the animatronic here is an allegory for the rest of the diseases that you pick up in these places.
Gameplay, well, you might be mistaken for thinking this is like a side perspective pixel adventure game, but it's not. It still has some of the mechanics that we've seen in other games, but in a slightly different way.
Yeah, so this relies heavily on stealth, which some of the Five Nights at Freddy's games have done. Things that I've played, like Security Breach, certainly do, albeit that was in a first-person perspective. This is side-on in terms of how you view the game. And basically, something strange happens to your dad when he turns up and tries to save you from this alternate world that you found in the ball pit. You go home with him, and it's quite clear quite quickly he's not his old self, and that one of the animatronics has possessed him or taken him over, but you're the only person that can see this. So you'll need to go through each night of the game, first trying to escape from your home, hiding in cupboards and what have you to get out of the house, and then you'll make your way back to the pizzeria to begin your investigations into trying to save your dad.
Yeah, there are a number of different locations you can hide, as Glen says, and you can also create distractions to draw those animatronics away in one direction while you head in the other. There are items in the house that do feel more like a traditional adventure game that you'll need to acquire at times, evading that assailant and trying to keep quiet.
Yeah, if you are needing to hide, you can make your way into a number of different, say, wardrobes or boxes, for example, and generally a mini game will then play out where you need to stay as quiet as possible. You may need to sweep spiders away to stop them from making any sort of noise, or hide in the darkest depths of the wardrobe to make sure you're not seen, and this is all done through correct button presses.
Yeah, I was quite glad that there was no randomness to it. You know, you can always avoid being found by completing those games successfully, unless the animatronic sees you going into that place, and even then it might give you a very short window of opportunity to try and evade them.
There are a few different locations within the town that you'll visit during your playthrough. I mentioned the pizzeria, which is the predominant place, but you go to school as well. There's a local mill that you'll need to go to at times, and there'll be other items and story beats here that will then lead you ultimately back to the pizzeria that night. So you'll play through days and nights through each of the scenarios, and the items that you find will then help you. It could be that you find batteries for a torch to make sure you can see what you're doing within the pizzeria, or you could even use certain items to power up some of the old relics at the pizzeria to use them as noise makers to distract the animatronics, as we mentioned earlier.
I was pleased to see that it's not all just being chased. So there are a lot of downtime segments where you might be sent off to deliver rubbish to the dump to then get a key to reach another area. And what it does that's quite clever is sometimes you'll be within the alternate universe and you won't be able to unlock a door and you'll have to go back to reality as it were, through the ball pit and try and figure out a way of either getting the key from there or talking to someone who will then be able to help you progress.
There are people to save along the way. Ultimately, it's your dad you're looking for, but there are some of your friends that have also been kidnapped by the animatronics, and new animatronics will turn up each night. So you'll see fan favourites such as Chica, and of course Freddy will make an appearance at some point. You can make your way into vents in the wall, and this will give you access to other rooms by way of the shafts that you can crawl through, and there is a map that you can refer to if you're getting a bit lost. You'll have objectives that you'll need to meet. For example, for one of the children that you need to save, you need to distract Bonnie by playing his guitar on stage and having them then leave the room that the child is trapped in.
Yeah, it does have a almost 80s, 90s Stranger Things vibe at times, this, and that's what I liked about it. There will be a few irritating moments, particularly earlier on when you're getting caught over and over and you're just learning the nuances of how to evade. But once you get to grips with it, you'll very rarely get caught, really. You have direct control over your character. You don't click where they're going to go. You can also sprint around the environment or hold down a button so that they automatically open doors when you reach them, which is a nice little design choice.
Yep, it's a 2D side-on adventure but on a 3D plane, a bit like beat-em-up games in that respect. It reminds me of games like The Coma, in terms of being the kind of a side-on horror adventure, albeit that one is strictly on a 2D plane, whereas this one does have the up and down movement that I mentioned a moment ago.
Visually, this one is pixel art, looks nice, I think, and it does actually use some 3D lighting effects, like when you get your torch, but it uses light and dark really well to create suspense.
It does, and bearing in mind that you're effectively exploring the same location just in two alternative universes, if you like, or time periods, certainly, they do a good job of making them feel like different places. You know, you can see the dilapidation of the place as time has gone on. You can see how it used to look. Things like the arcade room, for example, look so much more vibrant in the 80s version, but they both have that sinister feel, albeit for different reasons, because you're not actually being chased in the real world for most of the time, but it just feels old and dank as a result of time passing. You'll see Freddy and co playing their music, as obviously they do in most of the games. And again, that kind of leads into what I said a moment ago of starting off with things being as you would expect and then everything going, well, Pete Tong quite quick.
There are a few jump scares and they in turn come with their own audio effects that can be a little jarring. I guess that's the point. But once you've heard it a few times, it's a bit like, all right, I get it.
Yeah, that will happen in most horror games. They do a very good job of conveying fear through pixel art, which is not an easy thing to do, especially with things like the light up eyes of the animatronics and what have you. And there was also a very interesting noise, almost like the you know, the clicking noise in The Last of Us, that the creature would make, the animatronic would make as it was leaving a room, that I found quite unsettling.
Now, this video really is to highlight, as we say, the release of the physical edition. We'll pop a link to the Amazon page so you can go check it out. It's reasonably priced. It's £22.99 here in the UK, or your regional equivalents. There is a digital version as well, though, if that's the route you'd rather go. It's £16.75.
So there we have it. That's Five Nights at Freddy's Into the Pit. Neither of us are massive, I say fans, I don't mean it in the way that we don't like the games, but we're not massive into the lore and we don't know the full story behind it. I have tried to learn some of it, I must say, but it's just so big and so confusing now that I get lost halfway through. I've watched a lot of videos, you know, on like, you know, the full story and things like that. But I do enjoy the games and I do like how these spin-offs are so different from that main series that grabbed the world basically when it came out.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a weird comparison to make, but Five Nights at Freddy's is massive almost in the same way as something like Pokemon is, but Pokemon don't take any risks. And Five Nights change their game almost every single time.
They do, yeah. And this one was definitely an interesting one. Like I said, I've played a few 2D horror games, and this is up there for sure.
Now, if you want to win a copy, as we said at the start, just let us know down in the comments, or either what you thought of the game or your favourite Five Nights at Freddy's experience.
Yeah, if you want to drop any lore in there as well, please do. Tell us a bit of the backstory as to how it all started, and yeah, we'll pick someone at random to win that copy of the game.
Lovely stuff. All right, thank you to our Patreons, our members, all of you that enjoy the content, and for all things Switch all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers, guys. See ya.